Our topic today is living sacrifice. I'm joined today by Kelly Schmidt. Kelly works with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes in Arizona. Kelly was a former college basketball player at Vanguard University. For any of you old timers, that's the former SCC. Kelly was actually the National Player of the Year. You know, the Bible says, "Let another mouth praise you, not your own."
Right.
So I'm doing that for you.
Thank
all right,
you.
and then obviously All-American and All-Conference. And so, if you need to learn about how to shoot a jump shot, we're in the right spot. Living sacrifice. One thing I love about sport and faith is that there's so many spiritual connections, so many places where we can connect the dots. Tell us a little bit about why that topic and why that theme.
So one of the reasons I love doing what I get to do now is being an athlete helps me understand the Bible better. And so I remember sophomore year of college, it was preseason, so we're playing against each other 24/7. It feels like you don't want to play each other anymore. You're hitting each other. We're sore, we're in pain. At this point, I think I had a broken nose, just getting iced every day. I had stayed up the night before of this particular practice studying for a test at 7 a.m. And we got in trouble that practice again. Our coach liked to run us a lot, and so he tells us to get on the line. And that in particular practice, he pulled out a newspaper while we were running. And so he never told us how many sprints we're running. So, you know, we're just running a long time. So I happened to read, luckily, my devotion that morning, and it is in Romans 12, which Romans 12:1. And as I'm sprinting up and down the court from baseline to baseline, the thoughts in my head are, I'm exhausted. I'm literally in pain. I'm tired. I'm sweating everywhere. It's like, why am I doing this? Why am I choosing freely to do this and put myself through this pain daily? And so it's these thoughts, but Romans 12:1 popped in my head as I'm sprinting, and it says to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to the Lord, and this is your spiritual act of worship.
Wow.
And as I'm sprinting, I'm thinking to myself, worship I normally think in the context of the church, of singing before service and these things, but it was the first time it clicked for me as I'm running as an athlete and giving my body. I understand that. I get that I can offer my body in this practice, in particular, just this sprint, I can offer myself as a living sacrifice to God, and that can be an act of worship. And so from that point on, it really was life-changing for me as an athlete. That was my sophomore year. Junior year, you referenced being National Player of the Year. That was the next year. I went into every practice just, God, give everything that I have in this practice is to you. All of my sweat, my blood, everything is to you, and you've gifted me with these athletic abilities. Let me just put that out there in every game, every practice, everything, and that will be a spiritual act of worship to you.
That's so good.
Yeah.
So good. And nobody loves the practice and nobody loves the pain, but when you can see the fruit on the backside that it has meaning, it's super powerful and encouraging. Romans 12:1, not an unfamiliar verse. Can you share that verse with everybody so that they can kind of hear it and know it? And then I know there's a couple pieces that we're going to pick out of that.
Right. So Romans 12:1 talks about offering yourselves as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to the Lord, and this is your spiritual act of worship.
Yeah. And then it goes on to say.
In Romans 12:2, it helps you think about how to live that out. And so it talks about not conforming to this world, but being transformed by the renewing of your mind.
So that you may be able to test and approve God's good and pleasing will. We did that a little bit Run DMC style, didn't we? Right?
We did.
What are a couple things that you can pull out of that help us to be reminded that spiritually that we have to do in a sacrificial nature?
Yeah, and to me, just living that out now outside of sport in a daily basis, in a job or your daily life, it's all the little things. It's transforming your mind continually of not just thinking about myself but others, and how do I serve others, how do I love others in every small act, whether that's holding a door open, whether that's meeting with somebody to disciple them at a coffee shop, or all these little things that add up to be big giant things in this grand scheme of things.
So for all of us, God teaches us and tells us, don't be conformed to the pattern of the fallen world. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you ultimately get to the win, so that we can test and approve what is God's good, pleasing, and perfect will. All those sacrifice, all those practice, all this hard stuff, the payoff shows up in a winning season, National Player of the Year, and ultimately the All-American status and all those things. And it's true for us in our life. At the end, we really want to not conform, be transformed, so that we can really be in the middle. of God's perfect will.
Yep.
And that's worth it.
Yep.
Being a living sacrifice.
Absolutely.
If you want to learn and know more about this, there's some questions and discussion things to talk through at the end. And Kelly, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.